I am very tired. Hello strangers and story lovers, and welcome to my lair. As you can see, I'm trying a new setup. Hopefully this works out. Today we are talking about Two Twisted Crowns by Rachel Gillig, the second and last book in the Shepherd King saga. If you remember, I wasn't a fan of book one, and I'm not a fan of book two. This book and I aren't friends. I don't hate it, but I don't like it. I don't understand it, and I don't see the appeal. I kind of wanted to like it. At some points I felt like there was a good book, or at least a book I could enjoy underneath, but I just could never find it. The characters are annoying, the romance, it's just not my thing. Not because I don't like romance in general, just in this book, it did not appeal. I found the story to be very underwhelming. I was a bit bored throughout the book, not gonna lie. But I'm getting ahead of myself, let's just start this properly. As usual, I will start this review with the spoiler-free section, where I will just share my general thoughts about the stories, and then I will have a spoiler zone where I will spoil absolutely everything. But don't worry, I will let you know when to jump off if you want to avoid spoilers. But yeah, first things first, let's start with the spoiler-free zone. Let's start with a quick recap of book one, which should be very quick because it was boring. Our main character, Elspeth, lives in the Kingdom of Blunder, a kingdom which is subjected to a weird mist that just kind of infects people and give them magical powers, which is apparently very frowned upon by the king of the kingdom, King Ravyn, who hates people with powers. The only magic that he considers acceptable and legal is the magic coming from what's called Providence cards, which are a set of cards with magical properties like reading minds, being pretty, or controlling other people. They were created by an ancient king 500 years before our story start, a king who was called the Shepherd King, right before the Rowan seized power. And now the Rowan are trying to gather a complete deck of those Providence cards because apparently if you gather all the cards and sacrifice the blood of someone who is infected by magic, you can cure the magic fever. Which actually sounds more like people are trying to party, but that's not what it is. And our insufferable main character, Elspeth, is one of the people who have been infected by the magic. And Elspeth's power is that apparently she can absorb whatever is in a Providence card just by touching it. Halting again. Not again! And when she was young, she touched a card called the Nightmare card, so now she has this creature called the Nightmare in her head, which is revealed at some point in book one to be the Shepherd King himself. So she basically has an old king as an imaginary friend in her head. Great. Except he's not imaginary, he can also take control over her body, and when he does, she becomes super powerful. But the more he takes over her body, the stronger his presence inside her head becomes, and the more she vanishes in the background. Because magic has a price, and this is the price for her magic. Which is actually very funny to me, because there's also this card called the Golden Egg, so I'm just wondering what the price is here. Would Elspeth have started acting like a chicken if she had touched this one instead of the Nightmare? And I can already tell that some of the people who read book two are just flipping tables at this point. Calm down. I know. It's not exactly how it works. How it actually works is still very funny to me, but I'll talk about that later in the spoiler section. Don't you worry. Anyway, Elspeth hides the fact that she is infected by magic at the beginning of book one, but there's this guy called Ravyn, whose name I mispronounced throughout all of my review of book one, Ravyn. the captain of the destrier finds out about her being infected. The destrier are these guys who are hunting infected people. So you'd assume him finding out about her being infected and having magic would be a bit of an issue, but he's pretty chill about it. Which doesn't stop Elspeth from acting like a total bitch towards him throughout the whole book, so obviously they become a couple. He reveals to her that him and his family are actually plotting against King Rowan. They are actually trying to gather a second deck of cards before the king, because again, they are actually trying to gather a second deck. They're actually trying to gather a second deck of cards before the king does, because he actually planned on using the infected blood of Ravyn's brother Emory to unite the decks. Because yes, Emory, Ravyn's brother, is also infected by magic, and so is Ravyn, by the way. Which of course made Elspeth absolutely furious, because how dare this man who has known her for half a day not reveal to her that not only is he committing treason against the king, he's also infected, because Elspeth just feels very entitled to Ravyn's secrets throughout the whole of book one. And Ravyn doesn't see it as an issue or a red flag at all. It's just treated as normal, like she's owed his secret. Elspeth is just very entitled and everyone caters to her needs. Elspeth joined this little rebellion to try and rid herself from the presence of the Shepherd King in her mind, but because she is as dumb as a brick, she immediately gets suspected by the High Prince, Prince Hoth. Like, this little rebellion has been going on for years in the background, and the second Elspeth joins them, she's spotted. Don't tell me it's a coincidence. She's an idiot. So Prince Hoth captures Elspeth, and to free herself and save Ravyn, her love interest, she lets the Shepherd King take over her body one last time, shattering her mind and abandoning her body to the Shepherd King to use while she just vanishes in the background. Oh no, the horror. Terrible. The Shepherd King, now in full control of Elspeth's body, just completely mauls Prince Hoth and leaves him bloodied, injured, and unconscious. And now the Shepherd King, in Elspeth's body, is just thrown in prison for treason and attempted murder on Prince Hoth. But he promises King Rowan that he will deliver the missing card, the only I can see you still have a mind of your own, but we will get through this together. This is going to be a long one. The Shepherd King promises King Rowan to get him the one and only Twin Alder cards, and also to sacrifice his own infected blood to unite the decks, and hence cure the infection. And we end like this. Also a quick one because it's relevant in book 2, like very relevant. Ravyn's cousin is Prince Elm. He is the second prince, and he is also part of the plot against the crown to save his cousin Emory. Elspeth also has a cousin and best friend, Ione Hawthorne, who has been married to Prince Hoth and gifted a maiden card, which is a card that grants you incredible beauty in exchange of a personality, meaning you get really like cold and emotionless. And Ione used the card to get rid of the gap in her teeth and of her whale laugh, because Elspeth has very kindly reminded Ione at the beginning of book 1 that she has horse teeth and laughs loud enough to wake the dead. I know, she doesn't use that exact wording, but she might as well have. Remember that, because Elm and Ione are somehow important in book 2, even though it pains me to say that anything is important in this book. But now let's see what book 2 has in store for us. In the dark, spellbinding sequel to One Dark Window, Elspeth must confront the weight of her actions as she and Ravyn embark on a perilous quest to save the kingdom. Gripped by a tyrant king and in the thrall of dark magic, the kingdom is in peril. Elspeth and Ravyn have gathered most of the 12 Providence cards, but the last, and most important, one remains to be found. The Twin Alders. If they're going to find the card before solstice and set free the kingdom, they will need to journey through the dangerous mist-cloaked forest. The only one who can lead them through is the monster that shares Elspeth's head, the Nightmare, and he's not eager to share any longer. That's bullshit! Why are book recaps lying? So book 2 is pretty much the story of how they tried to find the Twin Alder cards to unite the deck and save Elspeth. Oh, and everyone in the kingdom, I guess. Yeah, sorry, I just forgot that this is not all about Elspeth. My bad. It's just that the book doesn't really seem to care about anyone else but Elspeth, so I just guess it kind of slipped my mind that there were other lives at stake. Silly me. Anyway, let's start with the positives. I have struggled a bit to find positives, I have to say. It's not that I hated all of my time reading the book, but even the positives that I could come up with, the things that I kind of enjoyed in the story, were always a little bit tainted for me. It was more of a, well, I guess that wasn't complete garbage. But even then, every time I was trying to praise the book for something, I always had a counterpoint coming with it, whether I was like, you know, that wasn't too bad. And then I would just go, yeah, but that aspect of it was shit. But yeah, I guess here are the points that weren't complete rubbish. First one was, it finally felt a bit more focused on the plot and not just Elspeth's inner turmoil. Not by much, don't get me wrong, it was still very Elspeth focused, but a little bit less. This point might be a little bit subjective, but when I think back of book 1, I just remember a whole lot of nothing. And book 2 tries to have higher stakes. It also tries to open the world a little bit more, show more things, like you get a bit more why they actually worship trees, because that was always a bit of a weird part for me in book 1, where I was just like, trees? Okay. And now you see them looking a little bit alive, so I guess that was a nice point to just discover a little bit more, even though to me it felt a little bit too little too late, so I wasn't that invested in the world, but yeah, I guess it was still kinda neat. And even then, I still felt like the high let's save the kingdom stakes disappear completely behind save Elspeth stakes. So I don't know, some part of it felt almost a little bit comical to me when they were trying to up the stakes, because I was like, not even your characters care about that aspect of it. What are you doing? In Ravyn's case, specifically, he was just so constantly hyper-focused on saving her that the quest of him saving his brother felt like almost a nice bonus to him. Which is stupid. I understand he's in love with her, but he's known her for what? Like, I don't have a complete understanding of the timeline. I'm not gonna pretend, but from what I've seen, it seems like if I give this book as much grace as I can, I'm willing to admit that they've known each other for a month. And it feels like she's the only thing he cares about above the lives of everyone in this kingdom, above the life of his brother. And yeah, that sucks. I hate that. Like, romance should not eclipse every other type of relationship. And again, like, even though I did appreciate the attempt and sometimes I was almost getting into it, it still felt like too little too late to me. Like, when I spent the whole of book one with like nothing but that idiot with a monster in her head and her love story, it's hard to feel like the rest of the kingdom is relevant. Like, this is when you're trying to make me care about the kingdom halfway through book two? No! Too late! That is way too late! You expect me to care now? You have made saving the world a side plot. My second point that wasn't completely asinine was, I guess, Elm and Ione. Let's not pretend I ship them, but they were okay. I mean, especially Elm. Elm was still cool as a character. Ione was alright sometimes. And later on in the story, they were decent. And I even found myself enjoying some of their romantic scene and some of their banter. Ione caught them just before they hit her face. She held them up to the light, brow furrowing. These are sized for a man, which I happen to be. Elm found a pair of dry boots under his bed and shoved his foot into one, the leather stiff from disuse. When I say you didn't know a thing about me, Hawthorne, I assumed there was some level of comprehension. The thing I didn't like about them is that they started with a very similar dynamic as Elspeth and Ravyn did, with this I don't like you so I'm rude to you dynamic. And it just really felt like a copy-paste from Elspeth and Ravyn from book one. Except at least here, Elm doesn't react like a complete carpet, and he does respond to Ione's rudeness, so it felt a bit less abusive. But yeah, again, we just had a situation where the female lead was just completely disproportionately rude and confrontational for absolutely no reason, which I don't know if it's supposed to be sexy or make her look like she's a strong, independent woman, but it achieved neither objectives. To me, she just sounded like a straight-up bitch. And I still didn't like that dynamic, and it still felt really forced. And because I had already seen almost the exact same dynamic in book one, it annoyed me even more here. I was like, oh my god, it was already bad in book one, and now you're just doing the same thing again with completely different characters who have absolutely no reason to behave in the same way. So yeah, my patience with that was even thinner than it was in book one, even though Ione was not as shitty a character as Elspeth is. But at least in this case, the rudeness was not one-sided, because Elm was not letting Ione walk all over him, at least. And there was no double standard of, oh, tell me all of your secrets, but I'll tell you none of mine. So yeah, that was not great. But it does get better later on in the story, at least. So even though I am complaining about it, they do get better, and Elm is still a good character, I find. Genuinely the only one I was really invested in. The other ones were just kind of... But yeah, sorry, this is still supposed to be a positive. But yeah, like I said, in the end, I did like them okay. Like, I did not ship them, but they were okay, and I was having fun reading parts of their story. And I did enjoy them individually as characters. Ione's goal throughout the book is basically to find her maiden card that she lost because she is sick and tired of not feeling anything. Which, on paper, is kind of an interesting idea. in reality, I wanted to like it, but I found it a little bit boring at times, which is a shame because it meant that the only two characters that I was kind of interested in had a plot that for a long time I wasn't that invested in, but it does get better a bit later. And I ended up liking the ending for them. Like, the book did a decent job of making me warm up to the idea of how they end up. So I thought that was neat. But let's talk about the negatives now, and I do have a lot more to say. First of all, the world. The world is just kind of bland, let's be honest. And I am usually very lenient when it comes to that. I'll genuinely, I think, forgive a lot about lore and world building as long as characters are interesting. And even if they're not, it's just not my priority when I read a book. Sure, I do like it more if the world is interesting and I'm just like, oh, I can't wait to find out more and I love hanging out in this place. But at the end of the day, for me, what I love the most are characters. So that's why for me, if the world building is not top notch, I'll generally be quite forgiving about it. Even though I get that it's important. But yeah, I don't mind generally if a world is a little bit bland or underexplored, as long as I'm having a good time otherwise, as long as it makes sense and I'm not just spending my time scratching my head being like, how is any of this working? Like, this makes zero sense. I am usually also willing to suspend my disbelief quite a lot. Why? This is what you asked for. Heavy is the crown. But yeah, I'm generally willing to suspend my disbelief quite a lot as well. But let's be honest, here, yeah, there wasn't much for me to sink my teeth in, so I just noticed how bland the world was. You get Providence cards that, to me, would be like a nice addition, but here it just feels like it's kind of everything. There's the mist, there's the spirit of the woods, and that's just kind of it. It's just like trees. Like, yeah, the noble families all have tree names. Again, that would be a nice added flavor if there was something else, but this is all we get, so I'm just a bit like, yeah, cool. And again, I don't particularly mind. Book 1 was just more focused on Elspeth's inner turmoil. The world was just kind of an afterthought. But in this book, you get more of a focus on the world, so it just becomes blatantly obvious how flat it is. It's like you're just pointing out the cardboard world to me. What do you want me to do with it? What do you want me to do with it? Like, honestly, at the end, when there is generally more interactions with the rest of the world, I found it hilarious. I was just like, oh, a vague sense of geopolitical world building 75% into the whole story. Well, welcome. Sit down, grab a beer. I'm sure we can make some room for you. Why don't you go sit here between Ravyn's calluses and his big nose? Yeah, I know they already take like half of the story, but I'm sure they can make some space for you. Second thing I didn't like about this book was the characters. I counted the characters as a plus in book 1, but I really don't think I can do that anymore. Honestly, it wasn't just Elspeth in this book. Nearly everyone pissed me off. I really think the only one that I didn't want to just strangle by the end was Elm. I was genuinely hyped when I saw that we would get Ravyn's perspective in this book, because in book 1, it's not that I was like a massive fan of him, but I thought he was an interesting character. But damn, I think he just benefited from not having a POV in book one. He really did benefit from me not being in his head. His perspectives were as much of a drag for me as Elspeth is, which is saying a lot. Maybe it was partially because of how hyper-focused on her he constantly was, and on how much he hated the nightmare for having taken control over her body. Which, I get to a certain extent. Like, the guy lost the only woman he has ever loved. Which is actually something that he says in this book. Like, sir, you've known her for what? 2 weeks? The only woman you've ever loved? Let's not get ahead of ourselves. Me. He's also presented as this cool dude that everyone is scared of. Bitch, when? Elspeth was walking all over him in book one, and that woman spent half of her time running away crying. When was I supposed to get the vibe that Ravyn was intimidating? The nightmare was also again mysterious for no reason, withholding information for the sake of cheap drama. Thinking everyone was dumb, but just cutting Elspeth all of the slack for no reason, even though she's clearly the dumbest characters out of all of them. But I guess he just got infected with her double standards. And I'm sorry to say, but he's also just not as clever as he thinks he is. Ione pissed me off a little bit at first, but then it got better. Was still a cool and enjoyable character, and I did like his perspectives a lot of the time. I wasn't overly invested in his plot at first, but they were still the most enjoyable parts because at least I didn't want to slap him every second. And I actually got invested near the end as well, where, yeah, his plot was just getting a little bit more interesting. And I'm just not even going to be sharing my thoughts about Jesper because I'm done pretending she's a character. I also just want to make a very quick special mention for the fact that if your justification for your character doing something stupid is literally, how could I be so stupid? I don't know, book, aren't you supposed to be telling me? Third thing that I really didn't like about the story was kind of the hierarchy of drama. Look, I understand that characters have things that they hold closer to their hearts that are theirs and is going to be different for different people. I genuinely value my mother's dogs' lives more than I value certain people's lives. You know, debatable, like, you feel free to roast me for it. I'm sure I'm not the only one. It just is what it is. Like, something we value more than others, even though other people would value that more. Just, you know, subjective and everything. And so I get that our main characters are not necessarily going to be crying for hours and days and months over the death of some secondary, tertiary characters. Like, if they didn't necessarily care about them, it is what it is. But when the death of some guy gets treated with less gravitas than someone getting their hair cut off, I draw the line. Get your priorities straight. Also, just the fact that throughout the whole book, the story is basically the quest to save Elspeth instead of the quest to save the kingdom, and Elspeth as a nice bonus, which, again, I get to a certain extent. We can get more motivated by the personal quest to save a loved one more than the impersonal save the world quest. But still, in this book, it really just feels like the kingdom is such an afterthought to him, and even his brother Emery feels like an afterthought compared to Elspeth, blah, 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 which just makes him a very dull character. Fourth thing I just really disliked about this book is the mysterious mystery. I just got so sick of the nightmare being this mysterious man of mysteries. He just could not get a line out without trying to make it sound somehow vague and epic. If the nightmare asked someone to go grab potatoes from the supermarket, it would probably go something like that. The place of many wonders awaits you beyond the hills. Forget not your coin, for nothing is free. Be clever. Be good. And from this journey, bring the root that grows under the earth, for I need it. He also withheld a lot of information for no reason other than drama, which just straight up annoyed me at some point. Especially because each time you can just be sure that Elspeth is going to throw a tantrum about it. I did like the concept of the nightmare being this threatening yet somehow weirdly protective presence in Elspeth's life that ended up taking control of her body despite himself. But the execution just did nothing for me. And I think if he had said the line, the girl, the king, and the monster they become one more time, I would have burnt my copy of the book. But yeah, I think that's it for the spoiler-free side of this review. So we are now going to go into the spoiler zone. So if you want to save yourself from any spoiler, please just leave the review now. Leave a like if you've enjoyed the video and subscribe if you want to see more of my face. Now go read the book if you want to, and once you're done, just come back, finish the review, and see if we agree. And now I consider all of the non-spoiler people gone, so let's spoil. The story starts pretty much where we left off at the end of book 1. Elspeth is gone, leaving only the nightmare / shepherd king in control of her body. They are imprisoned in the castle, Prince Hoth is unconscious, and King Rowan has ordered every single family member of Elspeth to be arrested for treason for not declaring her as infected with magic. Elm told whoever he could tell to escape, saving Elspeth's family in the process. But as he goes to investigate the Hawthorne house, he finds Ione alone. So because he is accompanied by 2 destriers who he cannot, tell the truth of his betrayal to, he is kind of forced to bring her back with him to the castle to get judged. But clever man that he is, he actually does manage to convince his father to spare her life, which she responds to by calling him a dumb idiot. She held out a finger and poked it with impressive force into his chest, emphasizing each word. "What was that?" The intensity in her eyes startled Elm. She was no taller than his shoulder, his clavicle really, but that didn't make her any less frightening. There was a quiet fury in Ione Hawthorne. The maiden did a good job of masking it, or tempering it, but it was still there. Perhaps there were some things not even magic could erase. Careful with that finger, Hawthorne. I told you, I'm delicate. "What you are is a damn idiot." Oh, great! More of the being rude to the love interest as a replacement for flirting that I loved so much in book 1. It must be my birthday. But yeah, basically, she's mad at him because he only managed to spare her life, not get her royal treatment. "I didn't want to be paraded around court fielding the gossip of what happened to your wretched brother. I wanted to get what I needed out of the castle and disappear. Trees. I thought you were clever enough to understand that. Yeah, trees is a genuine expression in this book. Love it. Your cousin tried to kill the High Prince Ione. It's a miracle he managed to save your life. Maybe show some gratitude? Meanwhile, Ravyn is sulking because he misses his girlfriend, and I wish I could empathize with that, but I don't miss her at all. First, because she sucks, but second, because she's also just everywhere, constantly in this book. I'm sorry, I was promised part of a book without Elspeth. I feel cheated. Everyone just think about her constantly. Both Ravyn and Elm, especially at the beginning of the book, she just lives rent-free in everyone's heads. But also, we still get her damn perspective all the time. She's like kind of floating in a void, trying to remember who she is, but also getting flashbacks of the Shepherd King's life 500 years ago. And I don't care. I so don't care. Also, how cheap is it that at the end of book 1, the nightmare tells us that she will disappear and be gone forever, when he damn well knew there was a way to get her back? Are we serious? We spent the whole of book 1 establishing that magic has a cost. And like they are very heavy with the cost of magic in book 1. It's like this very dark and heavy theme is that magic of all type has a cost and you have to pay it, and it can be very high. And after teasing me that if Elspeth continues to use her magic, the cost for her will be to basically lose her life, now you're telling me that the cost of her magic is basically taking a nap? I'm sorry, I want to take a nap too. That just does not sound like such a high price to pay, you know. I actually am a person who believes humans should hibernate for like 6 months per year. And now you're telling me that the cost for her magic, for being able to do like these stupid awesome fights, is that she has to be asleep for 2 weeks? I could do that right now, willingly. Like, I would love to sleep for 2 weeks. How is that a cost for magic? Like, I get to have these kick-ass fighting skills, and the only cost I have to pay is that someone else has to live my life for a week or 2 while I go take a nap. Sign me up. That sounds like a pretty good deal to me, Nightmare.
Nothing is free. Be wary, be clever, otherwise you might be forced to take a nap at some point.
Ah, yeah, true, no. I remember now, because in the end, Elspeth does end up having to pay a very high price. I forgot about that. Because when the Shepherd King takes control of her body at some point, he cuts her hair. Ah! No! Not her hair! How horrible it must be, you know, for a woman to have short hair. Absolute monster. The Nightmare had pulled Elspeth's hair, into a short plait. Ravyn blinked, tracing the plait once, twice, then a third time. You cut her hair! The Nightmare jerked out of his grasp. It was matted with blood. Ravyn peered back through the cellar's open door. A pair of scissors sat upon the old wooden table. There were chunks of dark hair on the floor. Whatever crossed his face stopped the nightmare in his tracks. The monster peered through narrowed eyes, dropping his gaze to Ravyn's knotted hands. "It will grow back," he said slowly. Ravyn pushed ahead without another word. When he passed a black horse tapestry, he ripped it off the wall with a violent yank, dusting his shoulders with mortar. He threw it to the ground, the iron rod striking stone with a loud clang. If he had known a way to rip the Shepherd King out of Elspeth and throw him on the floor, he would have done that too. I'm tired. You know, that nap sounds really great right now. Meanwhile, back to Elm and Ione. Ione ends up revealing that the Maiden card actually does more than make people pretty. It also, get this, heals injuries. "The Maiden, I was gifted freely, like a horse a lump of sugar, something sweet to distract me from the bit they shoved in my mouth." She lowered her chin, hair spilling over her shoulder. "Is it any wonder, if women discovered the Maiden's true potential, its healing power, that they kept it as a secret?" So, for 500 years, nobody discovered that the Maiden could heal injuries. Like, really serious injuries, I might add. It keeps you from dying, basically. And nobody but women realized that for 500 years. Somehow, they managed to keep it a secret for 500 years. Because they wanted to hold on to whatever power they were given. And nobody noticed. For 500 years. No woman who was using the Maiden was ever injured in public. For 500 years. Okay, I just need a little dose of suspension of disbelief. Yeah, that'll do. Yeah, that makes perfect sense now. There's also a part of this conversation where Ione is just like, yeah, beauty is the only power that men kind of wanted to give to women, so we took what we could get. And I find that statement very rich, coming from a book that has plot points of a woman having her hair cut off, or another woman being forced to wear ugly dresses being treated as such a huge issue. Because yes, there is a plot point in this book where the king forces Ione to wear ugly dresses as a punishment, which is already incredibly childish, but hey, moving on. So yeah, I just find it very rich of this book for patting itself on the back for being like, oh hey, look, I did a feminism, and then just have like huge drama around the fact that a woman got her hair cut off and another one is wearing ugly dresses. Who's the one who's focused on women having to be pretty here? Because it's not just Ravyn and Elm being horrified that Ione is wearing ugly dresses and Elspeth has her hair cut off. Elspeth also throws a tantrum later on about it. We will discuss it. And Ione is also just pretty down about wearing those ugly dresses. So, moving on. I am trying not to focus or dedicate too much time on Elspeth's plot because I really don't care, but some of it is a little bit relevant. In her mind void, she starts getting flashbacks of the Shepherd King's life. And we see his kids, who all have yellow eyes, except for one named Bennett, who has grey eyes, like Ravyn. And I wonder what that means. And we see the Shepherd King as he creates the Providence cards, so obsessed by the task that he just kind of neglects his own children. And we see him sacrifice his soul to create the nightmare card. So this guy sacrificed his soul so he could read other people's minds. Love this. And he has the audacity to call other people idiots. Mostly, the way it's presented, it sounds like he wanted to be able to read his friend's mind, his friend Brutus Rowan, who he's starting to suspect is going to betray him. So the Shepherd King, who always goes on and on and on about how many secrets he has and how nobody is aware of his secrets, doesn't like it when other people keep secrets from him. Oh, where have I seen that before? Oh, they really do deserve each other, him and Elspeth, don't they? Anyway, Ravyn has to leave the castle to try and go find the twin elder with the Shepherd King. King Rowan tells Ravyn that he's not allowed to take Elm on this quest because, well, Elm needs to stay and get a side quest with Ione. I mean, Elm is now the heir to the throne, so he shouldn't just be out adventuring and risking his life. So Ravyn instead just goes with Jesper and some cannon fodder. So they go, and Elm stays behind with Ione at the castle, where he tries to help her find her maiden card because she wants to stop her connection with the maiden card because she wants to feel things again. Because she misses being happy, which is fair. At some point she reveals that Hoth is actually the one who made her use the maiden card because he hated how lively she was. So then he used his scythe card, which is a card that controls other people, to force her to hide her card, forget where she hid the card, so she is condemned to feel nothing forever because he's a dick. Also, at some point, he pushes her out the window because he's a dick. And she should have died, but she survived because of the maiden card that healed her. Then at some point, they learn that Hoth woke up. So they go see him, and while he is awake, he still seems pretty out of it, and he's not really able to communicate, but he does keep staring at Ione. Meanwhile, back with Team Overly Dramatic, Elspeth ends up waking up after she's done catching up on the latest season of Providence Cards, Craft and Child Neglect. And she ends up being in the same situation as the Shepherd King was with her in book 1, meaning just like a voice in his head. And of course, the first thing she ends up doing when waking up is throwing a tantrum because he cut off her hair.
You vile, traitorous snake!
Tether yourself, dear one, the nightmare said, unaffected. It's only hair. Can someone explain to me why Ravyn and Elspeth both have a stronger reaction to the nightmare cutting off her hair than either of them do to a man dying in like 2 scenes? A man Ravyn is supposed to be kind of friendly with, no less. Granted, the guy was nothing but cannon fodder, but, you know, still. He was supposed to be on their side. He was supposed to be a man that Ravyn is, like, friends with, I guess. I don't know, it's hard to say because nobody cares about him. And this guy is gonna die in, like, a few scenes. And his brother, who's another irrelevant character, but his brother nonetheless is gonna watch him die. And Elspeth and Ravyn will show more inner turmoil over the nightmare cutting off her hair. And those are our main characters. And also, you know, we're trying to squeeze in some feminist messages in the story where our main female character shows more a reaction to her hair being shortened a little bit than the death of a man. Yeah, that's where we are. Also, it's like, it's still long enough that she can freaking plait it. Like, you know, I feel like there's a good book hidden somewhere in this, but I just don't find it. I don't see it. I've tried. I wish I liked this book. I wanted to like it, but where is it? Where is the good book in this? These characters are selfish, annoying idiots, and I'm asked to care about their stories. You guys don't even care about the guy who's trying to help you dying as much as you do about like a few strands of chopped off hair. Like, how am I supposed to get behind these characters? This is so dumb. This is stupid. They're assholes. Anyway, let's finish this. Ravyn and crew get captured by some infected people who live in the forest and force them to fight one another. I'm not going to go into much detail about this scene because I'm just not going to grace the story into pretending it's relevant when nothing is as important in this book as Elspeth is in a drama, or the fact that she got shorter hair now. But I do want to mention it because I kind of want to vent about it. Because this is a scene where we are trying to pretend that we did something with the story that we did not do. Basically, we're trying to pretend that Jesper is a real character, which is a joke. Basically, in this scene, the person who captured them makes them inhale like this toxic fume that just like annihilates all of their emotions but anger. So their anger is exacerbated, and so it pushes them to fight one another. And we start pretending like there's some tension between Ravyn and Jesper, which is just absolutely laughable. This was just never prepared. There is never a moment of tension before. It's just like, just comes right the fuck out of nowhere, where they just start saying some harsh things to each other. But it just gets addressed neither before nor after, really. Jesper just tells Ravyn that people are scared of him, which... And Ravyn tells her that she's weak. And honestly, I was just kind of... I would have been laughing about this scene if it didn't also make me kind of angry. Really, we're making like this high tension kind of scene where we pretend like there's any tension between Ravyn and Jesper. This comes out of nowhere and is dropped the next scene almost. Like after that, they just kind of quickly apologizes to each other and then it's gone. Then we don't hear about it ever again. So this conflict between siblings that have a whole scene dedicated to the drama of them fighting each other, never prepared, barely acknowledged later, but we get like 5 scenes of Ione calling Elm an idiot and like 67 scenes of Ravyn being angry at the nightmare because he's taking Elspeth away from him. Can you stop shoving the stupid romance down our throat and then giving me breadcrumbs of something else? This is starting to feel very insulting. If you want to explore other types of relationship, especially something as complex and interesting as a fight to the death between a brother and a sister, commit or just don't bother. Because the disproportion here is just laughable. This was bloody ridiculous. Anyway, moving on. Oh, I need to share this gem too. Trees, she said, her voice reverent. It feels so good not to be in pain. She pressed a hand to her healed cheek, then tapped the maiden thrice more. Say Elspeth touched this card instead of the nightmare all those years ago. She would have absorbed your hair? Yes, the nightmare replied. I had long hair, dark. His eyes raised over Ravyn's head. Like yours. Perhaps it would have clogged her throat, strung itself around her heart, made a nest in her lungs. So, Elspeth's powers is actually that she absorbs from the Providence card what the Shepherd King sacrificed to create it. So because he sacrificed his soul to create the nightmare, she absorbed his soul when she touched the nightmare card. And because he sacrificed his hair to create a card that heals any wound, which makes perfect sense, if she had touched the maiden card, she would have absorbed his hair into her lungs. Oh, that is so dumb. Oh, what else did this idiot sacrifice to make the cards anyway? I'm actually curious what price Elspeth would have had to pay if she had absorbed the maiden card. So, the Shepherd King's hair. Would he have, cut off her hair as a cost for her magic? Anyway. And now we learn that to access the twin Aaand cards, they need to sacrifice a charm. The charms are like little trinkets that they're wearing when they go into the mist, because the mist is like what infects people with magic, and those little charms protect them from that. And if they're not wearing these charms, they can get lost into the mist. And as we learn now, that's because the spirit of the wood calls the people who are in the mist without their charm. So Jesper gives up her charm and runs into the woods, and everyone is running after her to try and save her. And I swear I am trying to be invested. And Elspeth throws a tantrum because she's angry that the nightmare knew they had to sacrifice someone to get to the twin elders, and he didn't say anything. He'd known this was coming and said nothing. I didn't have claws or jagged teeth, but I had enough anger to turn the dark chamber we shared into a battering cacophony of fury. I screamed until I earned a flinch, then screamed again. Elspeth, that's a fair sentiment for once, but can you maybe stop distracting him from trying to save Jesper and make her sacrifice useless? Because that's what you're doing right now. Maybe just let him focus on the task at hand and wait until he saved your friends before you distract him with a tantrum. Oh yeah, because we're also pretending that Elspeth and Jesper are friends, even though Jesper is barely a character, and any relationship that's not a romance gets a smidgen about fuck-all attention in this book. Anyway, back at the castle, Elm and Ione finally find Ione's maiden card. Somehow. I honestly do not care where. So Ione cancels her connection with the maiden card, and finally she has her horse teeth and stupid laugh again. I know, I'm sorry, okay? I don't mean to insult any people who have a gap in their teeth. I actually understand where the story is coming from with that. I do think it can be very charming. It's just that I'm not over Elspeth's stupid backhanded compliment at the beginning of book 1, and how stupidly clumsy that monologue was written. So please, 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 if you have a gap in your teeth, don't take any of this personally. This is a jab at Elspeth. I swear I'm not making fun of you. You are perfect and I love you. But yeah, anyway, the real Ione's back, feeling things. So Elm is happy, she is happy, and they have hot, passionate sex. And I'm kind of surprised they didn't go like full whips and latex, because I swear the dumb Ione subtext is really strong. But maybe they just wanted to be kind of vanilla for the first time, I don't know. But anyway, not all's well that ends well, because we learn now that Hoth is back to full health, fully back, fully conscious, healed and hotter than ever. So clearly the work of the Maiden card. How, you may ask, when only the women knew about the Maiden card being able to heal people? Well, that's simple, my friend. When he woke up earlier and noticed that Ione was back to full health after he had pushed her out the window, he cleverly deduced that the Maiden card must have healed her. Right, the Maiden card. The card that nobody ever deduced could heal people for 500 years. He saw Ione and he knew. When I opened my eyes 2 nights ago and saw you so perfectly whole, I knew, even when I understood nothing else. I knew. The word slid between his teeth. The Maiden card healed you, Ione. Yeah, that's better. Long story short, Hoth kills his father and accuses Elm of doing it. He plans to use Elm and Ione as bargaining chip with Ravyn to get him to give Hoth the Twin Alder card. Because now he doesn't want to unite the decks anymore, he wants to stop them from doing it. Because the infection and the mist, he thinks, keep the people of Blunder in fear. And that is a great way for the Rowans to keep power over the country. So now he wants to keep the infection, the mist, the everything. Luckily, El manages to use his scythe card to take control of everyone and makes them freeze, and so he runs away with Ione and... wait a second, that sounds wrong. No, sorry. Elm helps Ione escape, and then he stays behind. For no good reason. No, really. No reason. At all. He could have escaped. He had time. He stole a horse and put Ione on the horse, and then he chose to stay behind and tell her to go without him. She tells him, begs him to come with her, and he refuses and gives zero explanation for his stupid decision. This is Elm. He was the only semi-clever character we had left, and we have him act this dumb? Why? If the story needed him to stay behind, couldn't he have just been recaptured? He saves Ione, but then he gets captured by one of the guards just before he's able to escape? This is such an easy fix. There were so many opportunities to have him stay and not be an absolute moron. And this is what we went with? What happened? Was this draft 1 of the scene and we just left it in? Anyway, back to Ravyn and the Ravenettes. When Ravyn enters the woods, or whatever he does really, who cares? We just get treated with this fabulous line.
Ravyn, the yew tree is cunning. Its shadow unknown. It bends without breaking. Its secrets its own.
Its own! its secrets its own. I'm sorry, have you met the guy in book 1? Its own. The audacity. You say that about Ravyn, the man who could not stop spilling his secrets to the woman he met a day before. The lack of self-awareness of this book. Anyway, Ravyn starts talking to the spirits of the woods. He starts being all dramatic about having lost Elspeth, the woman of his life, like we don't know he's gonna get her back in 2 minutes. And after all these talks about magic not being free and nothing being free in this world, the spirit of the woods tell Ravyn that she will give him the twin elders if he can guess who his great-great-great-great-great-great-grandpa is. And then she shows him the answer in a flashback. So, in this book that spent a whole last time establishing that magic has a cost, we also establish that the cost of magic is taking a nap and solving a riddle that you're given the answer to. Well, excuse me if I don't take that price very seriously. So the spirit of the woods reveals to Ravyn that he is a descendant of the Shepherd King. Cool. Relevant? Not really. I guess it just makes Ravyn a special boy. Anyway, having cleverly solved the riddle he was given the answer to, Ravyn gets the Twin Elder card. And so now that he has the Twin Elder cards, they need to hurry up to get back to Castle U, which is his home and where they have the rest of the cards. And they need to hurry up because they need to unite the deck before solstice. But I can't remember why. I can't remember why there's a time limit, but okay. Yeah, they just have a deadline now for when they have to unite the deck. Just don't ask me why I think the lobotomy juice is finally kicking in. So they go to Castle U, where Hoth is waiting for them with Elm, and the final battle finally starts. Ravyn fights against Hoth, and I think that this is supposed to feel like an epic conclusion to their very intense rivalry. But because Hoth was comatose for all of the book and Ravyn could literally think about nothing other than Elspeth, all I could think about when I saw this scene was, oh yeah, they didn't like each other. And Ravyn almost dies in the battle, but he doesn't die. He doesn't die, obviously. Elm and Ione arrive, but it's almost too late to unite the decks, so Hoth starts cackling. Ah, ha 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 ha, they may have a full deck now, but they don't have the magic infected blood to sacrifice, so they can't unite the decks. Ha 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 ha. But they are in the mist while this conversation is taking place, so Elm just rips off Hoth's charm. So Hoth gets infected by magic, and so they use his blood as a sacrifice, which I guess is fair. And so all the Providence cards merge into one single card, I think, that can cure the infection. So now Elm becomes the king, and he offers to heal anyone who wants to be healed from the infection, but people who want to keep their magic can also do that, and the people are no longer oppressed. Yay! They also heal Elspeth from her magical infection. So after some heartbreaking goodbyes, the nightmare vanishes and Elspeth is back. Yay. It's like she never left. Oh, and Jesper and Emori are saved. But let's not focus on them too much. We wouldn't want the readers to think they're actual characters instead of props.
None of this might have happened without you, Elspeth,
Ione whispered.
And isn't that such a beautiful thing?
I'm sorry, are you trying to gaslight me? Elspeth was absolutely pointless. I mean, things happened around her, but all she did was complain about one thing or another throughout the whole book, but she did nothing. Can we stop giving her credit for taking a nap? She's not a puppy. You want to know what our closing line is? How this story has the audacity to end?
I was more than the girl, the king, and the monster of Blunder's dark, twisted tale. I was its author.
When, Elspeth, when did you do anything of substance? She contributed nothing of this book. Nothing. Calling her the author of this tale has got to be the funniest joke of the story. Like, I mean, yes, she's one of the main characters. She's like the victim of the plot. Yeah, sure. The author? She spent book one running around like a headless chicken, and then half of book two napping, and the second part like scolding the nightmare when he called Ravyn an idiot. Let's not kid ourselves here. But yeah, that's our ending. At least Elm is king and Ione is his queen, whatever small comfort that brings. So let's talk about the characters. Elspeth is a chore. I really thought at the end of book one that we would get at least parts of the stories without her, which I guess in a way we do because we get Ravyn and Elm's point of views as well in book two, but I really thought that we would have parts of the story without her so I could breathe a little bit, but no, she's just back very quickly and she's like in almost everyone's mind all the time, which really nullified the effects of the ending of book one. I knew that she was always going to get back, don't get me wrong, but you don't even get to miss her. Like it's like she never left. She's just, you get told that she's gone and then she's back. And like I've said, it just really shatters the illusion that magic has a cost. Bullshit, it has. And honestly, if we have to suffer through her point of view so early on in the story, can we at least make it interesting? It was boring as hell. First, she tries to remember who she is, and then she does, and she has flashbacks of the Shepherd King's life, which I really did not care about. Like, it told me so little about him. Like, what did I learn? I learned that he neglected his kids and was obsessed with magic. Which I did not need to know that. And yeah, that's pretty much all her point of view contributed to the story. I guess at least in book two, she doesn't complain all the time about how much Ravyn doesn't tell her all his secrets after a day of meeting her. And yet she somehow still was just as insufferable as in book one. Perhaps because of her tendency to just throw tantrum and complain and be dramatic about every little thing. She's also just not very interesting, and she rarely shows interest in anything but herself, and sometimes Ravyn. And she's just very self-centered, borderline selfish, and just never really consider anything other than the impact it has on her, which would be fine if it was on purpose, but I don't think it is. I don't think she's meant to be this very selfish person. So yeah, Elspeth was still my least favorite character in this book, but honestly this time Ravyn wasn't far behind. Speaking of which, I found that Ravyn became very hard to like in this book, which is a shame because I thought he was a decent character in book 1. He was always a little bit lacking in personality, but I did like his aura of like mysterious, kind of cold man, but is actually a very sweet and caring person once you know him for more than a second and a half. But now in book 2, I feel like I just was completely wrong about him, about my perception of him in book 1. First of all, I learned that he was supposed to be scary. So scary, in fact, that even the king himself is scared of him. Everyone was afraid of Ravyn, even though he'd never admit it. The king. Bitch, when? I know I've said this before, but I'm sorry, in book 1, he spends his time being bullied by Elspeth fucking Spindle, who's the queen of running away crying. The guy would apologize if I sneezed in his face. And I'm supposed to read him as intimidating? I'm confused. But that's nothing. That's not my actual problem with him. My problem is the fact that we just need to constantly remind the reader about how obsessed with Elspeth he is. To the point that, quite frankly, he ends up looking like an asshole. The next voice was Peter's. It was lifeless. Rick's dead. Ravyn's stomach dropped. He shut his eyes. He let out a shaking breath, searched his mind for the right thing to say, came up with nothing. Jesper said it for him, her voice coated with pain. "I'm so sorry, Peter." They remained quiet a long time. "Elspeth," Ravyn finally managed. "Is she well?" Dude, your friend just told you that he had to watch his brother die. And your reaction is, yeah, very sad. Anyway, where's Elspeth? Fuck all the way off, Ravyn. Are you serious? He also just really pisses me off with stupid things. Like, every time the Nightmare does anything, he's just like, "No, I don't want blood on her hands, and make sure she doesn't get cuts on her fingers, and make sure she doesn't get mud in her shoes." The Nightmare's gaze drifted up the walls. "I've had enough of this wretched place. Give me the knife." "No, I don't want blood on Elspeth's hands." Back off, Ravyn. You're supposed to be saving a kingdom. Is it really that big a deal if she gets blood on her hands? It's not like she's the one doing the action. So, yeah, pretty much similar to book 1, where he was a little bit lacking in personality to focus more on his obsession with Elspeth. But in book 1, at least, what little we could see of his personality I kind of liked. I like his caring and kind of sweet personality if you got to the core of it. But here his personality, what we can glance of it, is selfish asshole. Compelling? Anyway, let's talk about the Nightmare / the Shepherd King. I found the Nightmare very annoying too, not gonna lie. Generally, the Nightmare knows pretty much everything and he just communicates half of it for no reason other than drama. Why did he make it sound like Elspeth was gonna die even though she's just taking a nap? Drama. Why did he not say they needed a sacrifice to get to the Twin Alders? Drama. He spends most of his time calling other people idiot, which is often true. And it was kind of funny the first 11 times he did it. But after that, I found that it got old pretty fast. Especially because at the end of the day, I don't think he's that much smarter than anyone else. He just kind of gives the impression that he is by talking in pompous riddles and being mysterious. It almost feels like the only way that we found to make the Nightmare feel smarter than everyone else is to call everyone else an idiot, which, you know, compelling. I also just did not care at all about his past. To me, it just made him look like an idiot. Like, really? You're giving up your soul so you can read minds? Also, what even is a soul in this universe? Because when Elspeth touched the Nightmare card, what she absorbed was basically his thoughts, and I guess his personality, like his self. But then, having sacrificed his soul to create the card, wouldn't that mean that he would be like a shell of a person, like just basically a zombie? But he was not. Like, you see him in his flashbacks after he's lost his soul, and he's just basically emotionless. Like Ione with the maiden, that's basically the same thing. So, is a soul emotions? But that's not what Elspeth absorbs when she gets the card. She doesn't just get his emotions, so what the hell is a soul? What did he lose? And again, I'm not that picky, I think, when it comes to world and lore and things like this. But here, it just feels like such an important element of the story because she picks his soul in her head, and I don't know what a soul is. And also, it would really have helped understand the cost of magic, which is a stake that we've lowered significantly in this book, let me remind you. The cost of his soul, I don't even know what that means. Like, he gave his soul for this card, and I don't know what a soul is, so I don't feel the weight of this sacrifice. I just don't. Generally, I don't feel the cost of magic anymore. Like, I feel like in book 1, I had a decent appreciation for the fact that, yeah, okay, magic comes with the cost. That's gone in this book. I'm just like, I'm sorry, no. Like, I literally feel like a loaf of bread costs more than magic in this universe. Anyway, yeah, I really do think that the Nightmare would have benefited from us knowing less about him. Genuinely, the more I knew about him, the less I cared. This whole part of the plot gave me this could have been an email vibe. Anyway, let's talk about Elm now. I still liked Elm. At least he was still his sassy self. But it did annoy me a little bit that he ended up feeling sorry for what he did and said to Elspeth in book 1. I mean, I knew it was going to happen, but it still pissed me off when it happened. Of course, the only character who ever called her out feels sorry about it. Because I forgot she was supposed to be a perfect little doe. But, yeah, Elm. I'm glad he became king at the end. When the crown kind of falls in his lap because of Horth being unconscious, he doesn't really want it. But then with Ione by his side, the idea just kind of starts growing on him. Because she mentions that she was looking forward to becoming a queen because she felt like she could do some good for the kingdom and for the people. And that, her thinking that makes him realize that, yeah, actually he could do that too, and they could do that together. They could be like a wind of change and fresh air in this kingdom. And so the idea of becoming king kind of grows on him. So yeah, he just realized that, oh yeah, we could do this. We could do some good together. And I just liked that emotional journey for him. And it made me grow fond of the idea with him, even though when the crown fell to him at the beginning, I was also a bit like, oh, that's harsh. And because it felt so hard on him, like he didn't want it, it felt like a burden. And I felt it for him, and so it was just really neat to kind of grow into the idea alongside him and just get hyped with him for him. And it was all the more soul crushing than when Hoth does wake up and you see that idea that he was slowly becoming fond of, and that the reader, I mean, at least myself, was gradually becoming fond of as well. When that gets taken from us by Hoth waking up, it felt genuinely quite sad. I said at some point that I found some of his plot a bit boring, and that was mostly finding the maiden card, because I kind of wanted to like the idea, because I like the concept of Ione wanted to feel emotions again. I like the concept, but I thought the plot itself was kind of boring, of them just looking around for things. But then when the plot becomes more him having to deal with his heritage and the fact that he's the descendant of a family of brutes and what's his place in that, and him having to deal with the fact that he might have to become the next king, I was actually surprised that I did get invested in that part of the plot. Some of my comments on Kindle are like, oh wow, I'm caring about something, like what is going on? I guess in a way you could say that I really related to Ione in this book, like, what is this? An emotion that's not anger and annoyance? But yeah, back on track. I mean, I did think that his connection to his family had some good moments and made for some of the good moments in the book. The rare ones. Elm looked away. Your son, he managed, bile in the back of his throat. It's worse than I thought. The damage to his body. My son? The king's green, bleary gaze found Elm's face. Even on his deathbed, you will not call him a brother. He never played that part well enough. Yeah, those scenes, I was genuinely invested. I enjoyed them. Him trying to navigate being a good person amidst all this cruelty. And I thought that the nightmare actually had a great line about it. Your cousin Elm has done more than Brutus Rowan or I ever could. He has looked pain in the eye and refused to let it make a monster out of him. So I feel like he's one of the few characters that Book 2 didn't do dirty. It's developed the intriguing aspects of his character, like his betraying his family, his not really fitting into this family of brutes and feeling like a fish out of water with them. So yeah, no complaints from me when it comes to Elm. He was a delight. He was great. Now let's talk about Ione. I struggled with Ione a little bit at first. I liked her okay in book 1, and I was very disappointed at the beginning of book 2 finding her again and not being able to like her, because I wanted to like her and I wanted to like the romance between Elm and Ione. But I think my problem is how the story just deals with flirting, I guess. Like, apparently it just has to start with the woman being a bit, or I don't know, sexually confrontational. And honestly, at first she feels like she's trying to misunderstand what he says to her. Like, she's very much twisting his words, and it makes all of their interactions feel very forced and petty. It's important to you, Elm murmured. Getting your card back. She hardly seemed to hear him. If you think this is about beauty, that I am opposed to what the maiden has done, you are wrong. It's not what he said. He just asked if the maiden card was important. He said nothing about beauty. And she's just, like, constantly calling him an idiot or telling him, like, oh, you're not as clever as you think. Or oh, for someone who thinks themselves as clever, you really are dumb. And she says that just, like, so many times for no reason when this guy is trying to help her. And the story just treats her like she's justified. No matter how much she's always the one starting the conflict, the story will side with her. "You're in a mood," Ione said into her goblet, her heart-shaped mouth stained red along the inside of her lips. "I'm always in a mood." "A family trait, perhaps." That set his teeth on edge. "You're not half as funny as you think you are, Hawthorne." She took another drink. "I wouldn't know where to start making a Rowan laugh." Elm pressed the heels of his palms into his eyes. "I'm sorry, I'm being an ass." She was the one being an ass here. It's very clear at this point of the story that family is a very sensitive topic for Elm. So her saying it's a family trait, like he has anything in common with his disgusting family, is very uncool. And yet he's the one who ends up apologizing for telling her she's not funny. She's spent the whole beginning of this book calling him an idiot, and I may be wrong, but I don't think she's apologized for that even once. So why does he have to apologize for her being a bitch to him? It just feels to me that women in this book just kind of get a free pass for being rude or cruel just because they are women. So it's not really being cruel or rude, it's being a boss babe. Cool. And I know that the idea is that Hoth hurt her so deeply that she just kind of assumes the worst out of the Rowans. So she is very guarded with Elm because she assumes that he's the same as the rest of his family. Which honestly would have been fine if that's what she was, if she was guarded. But that's not what she does. She is hostile, she is antagonistic, she provokes him. She calls him an idiot for no reason when he saved her. Like, I would have understand if she was cold and distrusting, but like, what does calling him an idiot have to do with anything? What does constantly insulting him have to do with anything? I just feel like at this point it's a ticking box of romance bingo for this story. Like, characters are hot, check. Sexy argument, check. It's not sexy though, it's just, it doesn't make them look like they're a good match. And it makes her look very unreasonable, at least to me. But, like I said, at least later on, when the flirting phase stops, they do start having some cool exchanges, and she ends up being supportive of him, and she's one of the reasons why he can accept becoming a king. And honestly, that was one part of their love story that I actually did end up liking, is that she helps him realize that actually, yeah, she's right, they could do some good together. So I can't say that I shipped them, but I was a little bit excited about them at the end. Slowly, Ione said, "I've been looking for Hoth in your face. For temper, or cruelty, or indifference." She leaned forward. "But I can't find any. I see guile, tiredness, fear, anger, without a trace of violence." She drew in a breath. "You're both Rowans, and less similar than I ever imagined." Now that's nice. That's exactly what he wanted and needed to hear. That he's nothing like his brother. That's good. That's a decent foundation for a relationship. Much better than calling someone an idiot for no reason. So, yeah, they kind of grew on me when they stopped love-hating each other for no reason. And can I also say, I loved Ione being the big spoon. Very cute. Her arms tightened around him. "No, Elm, I don't hate you at all." They slept. When Elm woke hours later, pale daylight shining in the window, Ione was still holding him. And I also kind of like the fact that she was the top of the relationship. That's, actually one of the acceptable way of showing a strong woman. Like I said, I wasn't overly invested in the maiden plot. I wanted to like it because on paper I thought it was interesting that she just wanted to feel again. But I just felt like it was taking a bit too long to find it, especially in a book that wanted to have higher stakes. It was just a little bit too long for what it was. But yeah, she was okay in the second part of the book. I did like her a little bit at the end, which made me happy because, like I said, I just really wanted to like Ione as a character in general. I'm just a little bit disappointed that we had to go through this whole stupidity with her being an insufferable idiot at the beginning. I wish we didn't have to go through that, but apparently that's just how this story treats romance. We just need to have this flirty hostility, hostile flirtatiousness. I personally hate it. I don't think it's sexy. Even though I do like, rivals or enemies to lovers when it's done well, but they need to have a reason to dislike each other. When it's just like one person being unreasonably antagonistic to the other one, I just don't find it compelling. I find it dumb, and I think that the person ends up looking unreasonable and unattractive. Very, very unattractive. But at least at the end they got better. But I think I'm done with the characters now, so let's wrap this up. I did not care. I think I ran out of thoughts around page 3 of this book. And I felt generally surprised and caught off guard when I started really caring about Elm's plot again. Because I was always kind of appreciating him, but because I didn't really care about the maiden card plot, and because Ione was getting on my nerves in the earlier parts of the book, I was not enjoying his perspective that much because there was so much that annoyed me in it. But then in the end, when they got better and I started feeling invested in their relationship and in the Elm becoming king and Ione becoming queen part of the plot, I was actually having a good time reading. It was just too bad it was interrupted by team overdramatic with Elspeth and Ravyn. But yeah, when I started being invested in the story, I really felt like Ione breaking her connection with the maiden card. Suddenly I gave a fuck. What an odd feeling. The other characters, Elspeth was a pain, Ravyn was a massive disappointment, and the nightmare was there. The story was just so focused on Elspeth and her drama and inner turmoil that it just felt like the rest of the story and the plot was kind of intruding on the Elspeth's show. So it was just really hard to take anything seriously as far as I'm concerned. Most attempts at developing the world or the side characters made me laugh. But anyway, that's it for Two Twisted Crowns. Leave a like if you've enjoyed the video, subscribe if you want to see more of my face. Thanks for tuning in, and continue to enjoy stories.